maybe a risky video to make, I don't think it's a good idea to try and make the Netflix of podcasts. So I just read an article about a new company called Luminary. They want to be the Netflix of podcasts. There's also one called Brew that wants to be the Netflix of podcasts. Obviously, Spotify wouldn't mind being the Netflix of podcasts, nor I think would Audible, though they may have let that ship sail. But maybe not. Lots of people listen to lots of audio content. I don't know how they're doing with their original stuff. I don't think they're doing great with it. Why do I think this is a bad idea? So one, is it a bad idea? Like, will it work or not? Two, is it a bad idea? Like, is it bad for the community of podcasts? Three, what are these things actually going to be if they aren't failures? Will they be the Netflix of podcasts, or will they be something else? I don't know, but I have learned from watching online video some things. And I would like to share a little bit of insight from that perspective of having viewed things like this, though not these things, attempting to occur with things like YouTube Premium and Verizon's Go 90 and full screen, and Vessel. Do you remember Vessel? Things like that. Because while Netflix was able to become the Netflix of TV, does that make any sense? Netflix became the Netflix of Netflix. That's for sure. No one was able to do that with user-generated online video. And lots of people tried. And people thought that there would be a way to consolidate this kind of content, put it behind a paywall, and make it work that way. And I think that the majority of these reasons why that didn't work are applicable to podcasting. Let's do it. So, number one reason why people think there's a value proposition to these new things like Brew and Luminary, I hope it's called Luminary, I'm not missaying it, is that it's an ad-free experience. And it's an ad-free experience, I think, just for the podcasts that are either exclusive to or have a deal with those new platforms. So if you sign up for Luminary, there will be 40 podcasts that you will not be able to get any other way. We'll talk about that in a second. But also that you will get ad-free. And I think that's the same for Brew, which hasn't launched yet. I don't think either of them have, maybe. There's a race, I'm sure, that the people at both of these companies are feeling a measure of urgency at the moment. I don't think that this is actually a very good value proposition, because one of the things that has been very clear in podcasting, and one of the reasons why it is a successful business for people, is that ads work and listeners don't mind them. They also have that skip forward button that people push all the time. I will say that I myself have been guilty of pushing it sometimes, especially when it's a service I'm already signed up for. Like, hey, I don't need a Squarespace ad. I have a Squarespace account already. Squarespace is currently getting my money. So I don't think that there is actually that much value to an ad-free experience in podcasts. That might be, that calculus changes for people of different income levels, of course. So the more money you have, and the more valuable your time is because you have a big fancy job, then maybe you are more interested in having an ad-free experience and not having that time wasted. But in general, I'm listening to podcasts during moments when my time is being wasted already by the vagaries of life, by the boring quotidian crap of commutes and mowing the lawn and shoveling the walk and doing the dishes and etc. I don't care that much about my time at that moment. It's not the psychological space I'm in. And we found something similar with YouTube. People aren't really willing to pay $10 a month to have an ad-free YouTube experience. The ads aren't enough of a burden, and $10 seems like a lot for something that you would already be getting for free. And I think that there is a psychological difference between television, which we see as something that we pay for, even if there's already advertisements on it. Television, we have always understood to be something we pay for. Movies, we have understood to be something we pay a lot for. And online video, which we have never considered to be something that we might pay for, ever. It's just like, doesn't enter into your brain that this could be something that you would pay for. Same with podcasts. The psychological component of this is worth a certain amount of dollars isn't there. And shifting that consumer consciousness is very hard, especially once it's been established. So it's harder for people who are already in the podcast listening ecosystem, who already listen, who are, like, who might be signing up for these platforms because their favorite creators have moved to them. So I just don't think that ad-free is a good reason to shift. Like, I don't think that it's going to compel that many people to do it. I could be wrong. Second thing is that there is a reason to watch the new thing because your favorite creator, maybe it's Hannibal Buress or Trevor Noah or whoever, is starting an exclusive podcast that you can only get that one way. And I think this doesn't work either. I think it doesn't work for two big reasons. First reason, maybe it does for some people, for some I don't know. You have to show me the pitch that these people are making to their audience. And it has to be a pitch from Hannibal Buress. It can't be a pitch from Luminary. Because I don't care about Luminary, I care about Hannibal Buress. I don't actually know very much about him. There are an infinite number of podcasts, practically, already. I have not watched hundreds of episodes of 99% Invisible, and they are all very good, and they are all completely free. They're so good. You can't increase the production value beyond the level of 99pi. You can't do it. It's already as good as it's going to get. Radiolab is already as good as it's going to get. The content is out there, and they're an hour long. I don't have that much time in my day to listen to that many podcasts, and neither does anybody. If the value is like this particular podcast, I'll buy it, because there's just so many other good podcasts out there. And then you say, but what if I am a super fan of this particular creator and I want their content? That, I'm willing to ride along with you on this train for a second. But in my experience as a creator, that some people will listen to a podcast because I created YouTube videos and they are already connected with my content and like have an affinity for the stuff that I make. I am aware that the value in that relationship is extreme. Like, it's a really big deal, and I will not ever push something on my audience that they are not already receptive to. I'll give you one go, and if it seems like people are into it, I'll give it again. If I give it one go and it doesn't look like people are into it, I either have to fundamentally shift that messaging and be like, okay, here's actually why it's good. And I did it wrong the last time. I explained it poorly. Here's why it's good. And if it doesn't work that second time, it's over. Like, that project is over. It is ended. I cannot do it. The value in my relationship with my community is far greater than whatever I might get for a one-time deal with a podcasting company, with the Netflix of podcasts, whatever it is. And so I am worried about the pitch that says, hey, come pay some strange VC-backed company money for my content. I will get something out of it. Maybe I won't. Maybe I already got the money. So you're not actually helping me. I think that sometimes companies can think that the value is in the content, and they really believe that. They can't get their minds out of this frame that the value is in the content, and it's like, okay, we'll have the content on our platform. The value is in the creator in this situation. It's certainly not the case with Game of Thrones. Like, the value isn't in George Martin. The value isn't in Kit Harington. I came up with one. The value is in the whole production. It's in the content. But when it comes to podcasts, especially conversational podcasts, which is a lot of the podcasts that are successful, the value is in the relationship between the audience and the person who's making the content. And oftentimes people will sign up to listen to a new podcast if they think they're helping you out. But if you're getting an advance and you've already been helped out, if like I do a podcast with one of these companies and they're giving me $500 an episode or something, I'm getting that money no matter what. And the story it's not as pure, it's not a simple story to say the way that we do with This Week in Ryan's, like, hey, give us $5 and we'll give you an extra podcast. And then we'll like use that money to be clear, because that money that our podcast costs nothing to make, will go to our educational media company. That's a story that people can understand. And it is a story that like is making a surprising amount of sense to people in this new world where, contrary to the whole other like economy, it's oftentimes better to ask for money than to make people pay. Like, I think that creators are going to have a hard time moving their audiences over to these new platforms, especially if they're not audiences with a lot of disposable income. And that leads me to the last thing, where I think that possibly, like, you look at these I've only seen like the sort of upfront offerings of Luminary. I've seen a couple of the things that Brew has brewing. Brew.com, very good domain name, that's for sure. It's all over the place, right? It's comedy, it's conversational, it's true crime, it's business, it's trying to be everything. And that's their stated goal. Like, they want to be for podcasts what Netflix was for video. But it makes me very skeptical, because the people who are gonna watch a conversational comedy podcast, one, they have a lot of options open to them that are very funny things that are available for free. And they don't necessarily have an extra $10 a month to spend. That's $120 a year. That's stuff that you can be spending on not podcasts. Whereas if Luminary, which it has a name that makes me feel like this would be a direction they might go, if you make content that's about investing, it's about business, you follow the sort of like traditional subscription model, and you say like you make a subscription magazine for rich people and you need a lot fewer clients, a lot fewer subscribers than you do if you're making a subscription magazine for, the average American. That would make sense to me. If you say this is like, if the content that's actually drawing people in is content that they're getting a lot of value from because they're being introduced to people who might be their clients or their competitors or their partners, customers, etc., or if they're learning things that are going to help them invest intelligently, like this is why the Wall Street Journal does well, right? It's a newspaper for rich people. And so if Luminary becomes a podcasting service for rich people who will pay extra for quality content that will help them make good decisions and understand the world in a way that is economically beneficial to them, I could totally see that working. I don't see it being broad appeal. So this was a lot of details that are like sort of one at a time arguments about why I think this might not be something that will work. But I think there is also a structural, fundamental thing that is the reason why sort of all of these things are things, which is that there is a different model for how this kind of content tends to get made. This isn't always true, but usually, and this is very true in online video, the thing that you're making isn't expensive to make. That does not mean that it is not hard to make. People are going to get those things confused till the day we all die. But just because it's cheap to make doesn't mean it's easy to make, but it tends to be cheap to make. And that means that a lot of people are going to do it, and that's going to result in two things. One, some people are going to be very, very good at it, and they are going to rise to the top. And they are not necessarily going to be who you expect. Two, there's going to be a lot of stuff that is popular, but not super popular. You are less dependent on blockbusters, and in a world that is less dependent on blockbusters, you have less need for a Netflix-like thing. You also have less ability for a Netflix-like thing to have something that everybody's gonna talk about and be like, oh, you're not subscribed to Brew, you haven't seen this new important thing that everybody's seen. Especially because those kinds of moments require there to be a pretty low barrier and also a broad audience to start with. So Serial, for example, there was a fairly broad audience because they were coming in with the support of a larger organization. And then you have somebody talking about it and it's like, oh, I could go listen to that right now. I don't need to buy a thing. I don't need to pay money. I don't need to download an app. I already have a podcasts app on my phone. I'll just get it and it will come and I'll check it out. That happens with HBO and Netflix because they already have the audience base. Getting to that audience base is very hard. And obviously for Netflix it started out not being about streaming at all. For Amazon, it started not being about content at all. For HBO, it started up about being a cable company in 1983. So that path is very unclear to me, especially in a world where making the content is not expensive and also no one expects it to be expensive. And so there is a little bit of this goes back to the sort of the original creator community conversation part. There's a little bit of why would I pay you for this thing that's clearly just you having fun and not working particularly hard for an hour? That's what I enjoy about it, this conversational feeling of hanging out. But having a paywall makes it feel like this is now transactional, and it does not make me feel that way. Whereas having a Patreon is not that. Having a Patreon makes it feel like, oh, if I can support it and I'll get an extra thing, but it's not a big deal if I can't. So I think that Patreon is going to be a bigger deal for funding podcasts than, and I might eat my words. I'm not saying that I know more about this than anyone in the world. Listen to me, but I think Patreon's going to be a bigger deal for funding podcasts than subscription services will be. But I also used to say that YouTube would never go HD. So take it all with a grain of salt. And the last thing, are we still talking about this? Is that, like, if it did succeed, would it be good for podcasting? Of course, I do not begrudge anyone who's taking money to make a show like this right now. I probably wouldn't, not because I don't want their money or I think it's a bad thing, but because when I make content, I like it to be available for the largest audience possible. And because, like, usually, not all the time, like sometimes I can see circumstances in which my company is making content because, like, it needs to make money, and that's life. Like, that's okay. But especially if it's going to have my voice or face on it, I'm loath to and have said no to a number of different opportunities that would create higher production value content that would live behind paywalls, and I just didn't feel like there would be a way for that stuff to reach the number of eyeballs that would make me feel good about it. Making content that's really good doesn't matter if nobody's going to watch it, and by putting it behind a paywall, you automatically and immediately say that, like, it's not going to get viewed by as many people. This is the current state of internet content, and it is a bit of a shame, and I think that advertising is not a great system, though I will say that it's better in podcasts than it is in any other medium I have created on for the internet, and that includes video and the written word, I guess, are the two main ones. It's tomorrow. I didn't finish the video, so I'm back with the end of the video. Is it a bad thing? I can't believe it's been 2 days. Is it a bad thing? I think that if Luminary is successful, it's a bad thing. But I don't think it has any chance of being successful, so I'm not worried about it. And I think that Luminary, on its path to going toward its dream of being the Netflix of podcasts, might be a good thing. It might just help some people level up their content. It might help people grow their businesses. I certainly wouldn't bet my business on it. Hopefully nobody's gonna have all of their employees based on this. But I think if they were successful, if they actually just dumped so much money into podcasts that somehow they built a money fortress that sucked people in and created this new idea of what a podcast was and brought a whole new group of people in and changed consumer behavior and really did it, I think it'd be bad. I think it would be bad for podcasts because then you've got too much power consolidated in one place. And I don't know these people. I don't know if they're good people, trustable people, but even with my own self, I would not trust me with this. The beautiful thing about podcasts is that it's based on RSS, this fairly ancient internet technology. And you just submit your RSS feed places and it shows up. You control the actual physical files, which is not how YouTube works. YouTube hosts the files and it does all of this stuff, and so we are beholden to this giant company. We're not like that, and that's the great thing about podcasts, is that there is no YouTube of podcasts. There's no Netflix of podcasts. That's one of the great things about it. So yes, I think if Luminary succeeded, it would be bad. I think it has no chance of succeeding. And that is what I came back to tell you a day later after I started this video. All right, bye.